French region of Burgundy is not only one of the finest wine-growing areas of the world, but potentially the most intricate. The simple premise of white wines based on Chardonnay and red wines based on Pinot Noir gives way to over 2,000 years of history and complexity.
Burgundy is very famous worldwide, as you know, because it's the birthplace of two grapes which are very famous, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir.
The climate in Burgundy is continental. The summer hot and the winter are cold.
The soil composition of individual vineyards vary, and each site demands a different approach, from grape selection to style of winemaking.
Winemaking is always a personal view, a personal expression of terroir. It's diversity of soil, of exposure, of microclimates.
Centrally located, the city of Beaune serves as the economic hub of the wine business, but Burgundy abounds with countless small villages, each with their own unique character and wine style. Like many French wine regions, grape growing can be traced back to the Romans, but it was the influence of the ruling dukes of Burgundy and religious orders that had the most influence on the tradition and quality of the wines.
The monks, as you know, in Burgundy have been very important many centuries ago.
They try to make very good wine, and they select the best area to make the wine.
In the early 10th century, monks began isolating superior vineyards and surrounding them with stone walls, producing wines of singular expression. In the 14th century, a Cistercian abbey created Burgundy's largest enclosed vineyard with the establishment of the Clos de Vougeot.
Remember that the monks during the Middle Ages were the engineers, the agronomists of the time. And where the miracle is that the monks, during the Middle Ages, found in the forests of Burgundy a wild varietal that was called later Pinot Noir, which married to these soils is capable to produce great wine.
The ruling Valois dukes limited the use of red grapes to Pinot Noir, changing the landscape for the future of Burgundy. Philip the Bold forbade importation of grapes from outside regions and ordered Gamay to be torn up. In theory, Gamay would remain only in the southern peasant region of Beaujolais, where today it's still the primary grape. Ironically, Gamay can be produced in the village of Chardonnay, but not in its namesake hamlet near Saint-Aubin. When Burgundy was incorporated into the Kingdom of France, the church owned the majority of famous vineyards. After the French Revolution, former monastic lands were auctioned off. Napoleonic codes established that property was to be distributed equally to surviving heirs, creating a complicated ownership structure. As time progressed, later generations may have owned only a single row of vines in a prized location. This led to the rise of the negociant, who stepped in to buy grapes from multiple owners and produce a single wine for the market. Today, Burgundy is made up of 6 vastly different and relatively small wine-growing regions, but what the region lacks in size, it makes up for in complexity. At the north of Burgundy is Chablis, known exclusively for white wines.
Chablis, it's a wine, but it's a village. 2,500 people, 100% of the people live because of the wine of Chablis. The wine of Chablis is made with Chardonnay, of course. It's a cooler place than Beaujolais. And that's why it makes Chablis so special, you know? That mineral flavor that you get, you know, that light acidity.
The vineyards of Chablis are covered by 3 appellations with increasing levels of quality: Petit Chablis, Chablis, and Chablis Grand Cru. The Chablis appellation includes geographic designations for Premier Cru vineyards, while the Grand Cru designation applies to a single appellation which can be divided into 7 named plots.
The Petit Chablis, it's a super wine. Young, you know, very appealing, very refreshing, you know, very open. Chablis has more body, you know, it's a little different, of course. It can age a little more. Premier Cru, well, you have some Premier Cru not far from the Grand Cru, which are, of course, wine with more body, you know, bigger structure. And the Grand Cru, you have 7 different climate names. You can see the slope. You know, it's facing southeast, and you have the sun all day long on that hill.
While the roots of wine character stem from a maddening number of factors, the wines of Chablis are inextricably linked to their calcareous soil.
You have a good example right here. That's limestone. You can see all those small oyster shells. If you love oyster, I think the Chablis village is perfect, really. Because you have a certain amount of acidity, it's not too rich, you know, and it's a good balance against the oyster.
South of Chablis is the Côte d'Or, encompassing both the Côte de Nuits and the Côte de Beaune. The icon of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, these wines are the most revered and expensive examples of their type, regardless of the final quality in the bottle. Most producers release a wine at the regional level, but the quality hierarchy is extended with a multitude of village appellations. These village wines may include additional designations of named Lieux-dits or specified Premier Cru vineyards, which have historically produced wines of superior quality. Beyond the village level, a handful of prestigious vineyards boast their own appellation, limited only to grapes from that single plot.
50% of the area is Bourgogne, 30% is village, 12% is Premier Cru, and 3% is Grand Cru.
The Grand Cru is usually the best located place among the villages. And you find them usually on a very little slope, usually on the southeast. The Côte de Nuits is known for its red Burgundy.
The Pinot Noir in Côte de Nuits is more full-bodied and more powerful.
Most of the Grand Cru red are located in the Côte de Nuits. The Grand Cru is something that should give you more intense pleasure, developing more complexity, the ability to age for a longer time as well, whatever the vintage, I should say. Here we are in the heart of the Marais Saint-Denis, and the Grand Cru, which is behind us, is the Clos de Lambret.
While Grand Cru wines are universally expensive, the reputation of a Premier Cru may vary in status, from little above the village designation to a reputation that may exceed some Grand Crus.
We are standing in the vineyard of the Clos Saint-Jacques, which is known around the world for being the most famous Premier Cru of Gevrey-Chambertin and with the level of quality of the Grand Cru.
The distinctions between individual villages vary widely. Mâconnais can be simple, delicious, and relatively inexpensive, while the wines of the most famous village, Romanée-Conti, can cost thousands of dollars for a single bottle. Often in a blind tasting, generalizations of village style can be elusive in the glass, but this never stops lovers of Burgundy from making poetic contrasts.
In the Côte de Nuits, if you start from the north, you have wines in the appellation of Mâconnais. You have wine in Gevrey-Chambertin, in Chambol-Musigny. The wine from Chambol-Musigny, I should say, are the ones people would say are more feminine, with lots of fruit, whereas the wines from Gevrey-Chambertin would be rather more structured wine, even if they have very nice dark fruit and sometimes cherry notes characters. The most refined is the wine from Romanée. Romanée wines is usually regarded as the pearl of the Côte.
The Côte de Beaune makes some of the most famous white wine in the world, but it's actually planted with more Pinot than Chardonnay.
The soil in Côte de Beaune is limestone and clay. On average, you have more Pinot planted in clay soil and more Chardonnay vines planted in limestone.
Usually, Côte de Beaune is a bit more fruity, more open, more easy to taste earlier than Côte de Nuits. But that's not all the time the same way.
The main villages for the red, you have Volnay, Pommard, Beaune. For the white are Chassagne, Puligny, and Meursault. Meursault is creamy, it's very rich, intense. We said it's sweet but dry. In Meursault, we don't have Grand Cru. There is Grand Cru in Chassagne and in Puligny for the white.
Since 1847, when the village of Gevrey appended its most famous vineyard to its name, every village boasting a Grand Cru vineyard has followed suit. Nowhere has this brilliant marketing been more effective than with the wines of Chassagne and Puligny-Montrachet.
In general, Puligny is more elegant, more mineral, more limestone. Chassagne more sweet, more large wine because more clay.
Wines labeled as Pommard or Volnay are exclusively red. Not as famous as the top Pinot Noir of the Côte de Nuits, these wines are often favorites of experienced Burgundy lovers.
Volnay Pommard, it's a very nice reputation for the reds. Volnay, it's a bit more massive, more structured wine.
While there are over a dozen village appellations for red wine in the Côte de Beaune, there's only one Grand Cru. Corton can produce both red and white wines at the Grand Cru level, but wines labeled as Corton Charlemagne are exclusively white. Along with Bordeaux, Burgundy is one of the few Old World wine regions that relies on the use of new oak barrels to define its style. Producer philosophy varies widely, but in general terms, more expensive wines are likely to receive increasingly lavish wood treatment.
When I started 20 years ago, the people like more new oak, more rich wine, more structured wine. Now the people have more education and they like more elegant wine and the people use less and less new oak usually.
South of the Côte de Beaune is the Côte Chalonnaise.
So Côte Chalonnaise, it's a beautiful region which is very bumpy, hilly. The soil in Côte Chalonnaise is very vibrant. We have a big diversity of soil. It's mainly composed by clay, producing Pinot Noir, and also limestone, producing Chardonnay. But we have the chance to have also a lot of iron components. In a plot like Mercurey, Premier Cru, Les Ruelles, the soil is really red, like blood, and it provides to the wine a beautiful aging potential in the bottle.
There are several villages located in the Côte Chalonnaise famous for unique styles of wine. Bouzeron is known for being the only AOC producing wines from the grape Aligoté.
Aligoté is it's a different grape producing white wine, different compared to Chardonnay. And Aligoté is producing a wine which is very fruity, crispy, which is perfect for aperitif, to take a glass before lunch or dinner.
Rouilly produces both red and white wines, but much of the fruit is destined for Crémant de Bourgogne, the sparkling wine of Burgundy.
The grapes which are allowed in Crémant are Chardonnay and Pinot Noir for sure, but also Gamay. It will be a white Crémant, but coming from red grapes. Montané is made from Chardonnay grape. It's a beautiful wine, for example, to have a glass before dinner also, or to match it, I would say, with scallops. Gevrey, it's a beautiful village, which is almost like an amphitheater facing south. Most of the vineyards are middle of the slope, south-facing, as I told you, and they are able to produce a very juicy Pinot Noir. It's a beautiful wine to be able to enjoy young.
Mercurey is considered the viticultural heart of the Côte Chalonnaise. With a focus on red wines and over 30 Premier Cru vineyards, Mercurey produces some of the most structured wines of southern Burgundy.
90% of the vineyards planted in Mercurey are producing Pinot Noir and 10% of Chardonnay. And it's producing a very classic Pinot. With Mercurey is the opportunity of being able to enjoy a beautiful bottle of wine representing a superb quality-price ratio.
The Côte Chalonnaise offers outstanding value. While there are no Grand Cru vineyards south of the Côte de Beaune, lovers of wine as an everyday drink will be rewarded by exploring Burgundy's southern reaches. Home to the grape's namesake village, no part of Burgundy is more historically linked to Chardonnay than the Mâconnais. Its 6 appellations are dominated by the world's most famous white grape, and its style can be thought of as a worthy contrast to Chablis. The wines are not as fashionable as decades past, when no wine list was complete without a Puy-Fuissé. But prices of Burgundy's more northerly wines may spark a revival for a new generation.
The Mâconnais area is very diverse. If you have the chance to come and to see the landscape, you'll see that small valleys, you have different weather, and also you have a different in altitude. So you can imagine that you have different in climate, different in exposure, of course. The Mâcon wines are not only one Mâcon, but there are a family of diversity of Mâcon.
Close to 90% of the grapes grown in the Mâcon are Chardonnay.
Why we have Chardonnay grapes here, first of all, is because the soils are mainly clay and limestone soils, and this is exactly where the Chardonnay grapes is loving to grow. Here, in the Mâconnais, you get some south weather influence. So that's to say, usually, summer period of time are rather hot, and so that's why the maturity of the grapes usually is higher. So here, in particular, in the Puy-Fuissé and in the Mâconnais area, we have to pay attention to the balance of the wines, so that's to say the alcohol level and the acid balance, which is completely different as the one you can get, for instance, in the Côte de Beaune and at the extreme in the north, that's to say in Chablis.
A host of villages may append their name to the Mâcon appellation, but the region's best-known wines come from the communes of Puy and Fuissé.
The thing with Puy-Fuissé is that it covers different villages, which is different as Puligny-Montrachet, for instance, where you have one village. Here you have different villages that can produce Puy-Fuissé. So from the south to the north, we have the village of Chintret. Here we are in Fuissé. Then we have the village of Puy, the village of Solutré, and then the village of Vergisson. So all these villages, which represent about, I would say, 1,500 acres, can produce Puy-Fuissé appellations.
In the far south of Burgundy lies the hillier region of Beaujolais. Despite growing almost exclusively Gamay, Beaujolais wines can be diverse, from simple Nouveau wine to age-worthy expressions from its 10 cru villages.
La région beaujolaise était la basse région bourguignonne et les 10 crus qui se sont créés petit à petit, c'est-à-dire Moulin à Vent le premier, qui est le cru voisin de chez nous, en 1926, et après une majorité de crus qui sont comme fleuris en 1936. Voilà. Alors le Beaujolais, ce qu'on repère dans notre paysage, c'est-à-dire c'est un très montagneuse, pas très haute, au maximum c'est 1000 mètres. Hein. Alors le cépage en Beaujolais, c'est uniquement Gamay. Gamay, parce que c'est une région qui est très granitique et où ce cépage Gamay se plaît vraiment très très bien. Le parfum du Beaujolais est toujours assez caractéristique de parfum de fruits rouges, c'est-à-dire fraises, framboises, cassis, et parfois sur des crus un peu plus typés. Les 3 crus les plus, ce qu'on pourrait dire les plus fruités, c'est-à-dire Brouilly, Régnier, Chirouble. Les crus qui sont toujours fruités, mais avec un peu plus de structure, peut-être avec de l'élégance, c'est-à-dire Saint-Amour, Fleury, Chéna environ. Et après, les crus qui sont un peu plus structurés, c'est-à-dire Côte-de-Brouilly, Morgon, Juéna et Moulin-à-Vent. Voilà. Pour Beaujolais, c'est pas carbonique macération, c'est souvent semi-carbonique. La partie supérieure de la cuve est ouverte à l'air ambiant. Mais la protection se fait automatiquement parce que la fermentation semi-carbonique ou carbonique dégage beaucoup de gaz carbonique. Et votre cuve est toujours en saturation de gaz carbonique qui empêche l'oxydation. Cette nourriture, n'importe comment, à la base, c'est quand même toujours une nourriture locale. Terrine, en pâté, et saucisson, c'est la charcuterie. Poulet rôti, des choses comme ça, oui, c'est très très bien.
Burgundy is a region steeped in tradition, but the potential of a changing climate may force producers to evolve in the future.
The main thing we're wondering is about the weather condition. What we have noticed is over the recent vintage, we were able to catch more great level of ripeness.
When we talk about global warming, yes, it's a little warmer than we used to.
20, 30 years ago, we were struggling to get enough level of ripeness, enough mature fruit in our wines.
We used to harvest the last few days of September, beginning of October. Lately, well, last year we actually harvested we started on 1st October.
This is a positive evolution in the wine so far, but there is a limit. If this global warming keeps on going, then we might fear of having too hot a vintage.
The future of Burgundy will be fascinating to watch. From an uncertain climate to diverging prices between the most famous vineyards and lesser-known appellations. But one thing is clear. Burgundy, with its singular focus on benchmark grapes and single vineyard expression, is the ascendant model for prestige wine around the world.